Well, hello there. How's everybody doing today? I'm back with my playlist series of When Do Boys Become Men? I think that's a leading question that a lot of us are asking, even as adults into our senior years. What we're going to be talking about in this video is we're going to be talking about key point number 6. We're going to be talking about moral maturity. What is it? How do we define it? And what does it mean for Christians? It's coming right up. The first thing I like to do is I like to put moral maturity up here, and I want to say that the moral maturity that I'm talking about is sufficient to lead as an example of righteousness. So, where do we find righteousness at? Stereotypical behavior on the part of a young man is, in the main, marked by recklessness, irresponsibility, and worse. As a boy grows into a man, he must develop moral maturity as he inspires to righteousness, learning to think like a Christian, act like a Christian, and show others how to do the same. The Christian man is to be the example to others, teaching by both precept and example. Of course, this requires the exercise of responsible moral reasoning. Boys will not learn this on their own, but must be taught. True moral education begins with a clear understanding of moral standards, but must move to a higher level of moral reasoning by which a young man learns how biblical principles are translated into godly living and how the moral challenges of his day must be met with the truths revealed in God's inerrant and infallible word. Very important, right? Biblical manhood does not develop in a vacuum. A boy a boy's most important teacher is his dad, and one of a father's chief responsibilities is to instruct and inspire his son into true manhood. My questions here, my friend, is what happens if a boy doesn't have a father figure in his home growing up? What happens then? Or what happens if he does have that father figure, but he's not raising him in the way that he should be raising him? It's a pretty good question, isn't it? Well, moral responsibility, as defined as knowing right and wrong and doing good in the face of what is wrong. So, in this playlist, in these videos, what I do is I try to find an article or something that I believe has merit. I think it's best to just do a Google search and just kind of read some of the topics that I find here for you. It says the first thing at the top of the list when I did a search on defining moral maturity. First one, it says, what is moral maturity? A morally mature person is not only a moral agent, but is also aware that he or she is a moral agent. And Kagan, 1994, refers to people's increasing ability to consider their own cognitive processes as they develop. Their own thinking becomes an object of thought, something to be understood, evaluated, and improved. So that's one of the things that I found on what moral maturity is. Here's another one. What is the definition of moral maturity? And it goes on, moral development is the process throughout which children develop proper attitudes and behaviors towards other people in society based on social and cultural norms, rules, and laws. Okay. Here's one that says people also ask, what is meant by moral maturity? Let's click on that one. Moral maturity is a requirement in the person who is to apply a body of knowledge or a skill to a situation or a problem, or to the understanding of a solution. If the knowledge is not to remain abstract and the skill potential unrealized. Wow. Here it says, what are characteristics of the moral mature person? Morally mature person. We have identified 7 elements of moral maturity: moral agency, harnessing cognitive ability, harnessing emotional resources, using social skill, using principles, and respecting others, and developing a sense of purpose. I think there's some pretty good definitions of what moral maturity is. So, what defines maturity in a person? In psychology, maturity is ability to respond to the environment, being aware of the correct time and location to behave, and knowing when to act according to the circumstances and the culture and the society one lives in. I would agree with that. You know, there's a lot of research that we can see to understand what moral maturity is. Let me type in here, define moral. So when I type that in, moral gives me it's an adjective, no, adjective. Number 1, concerning with the principles of right and wrong behavior and goodness or badness of human character. Okay. Number 2, holding or manifesting high principles for proper conduct. And as a noun, it's a lesson, especially one concerning what is right or prudent, that can be deprived from a story, a piece of information, or an experience. And number 2, a person's standards of behavior or beliefs concerning what is and is not acceptable for them to do. So as we do a Google search here, we find many things that talk about moral maturity, but we want to understand that it's sufficient to lead as an example of righteousness. So we can look into examples of righteousness too as we understand what moral maturity is. I hope that this brief key point has made you think a little bit, made you think about your moral maturity. And if you're a teenager and you're thinking about, okay, what do I have to do to be a man, to change my attitude from a boy into a man? Maybe think about moral maturity. My friends, until the next time we meet, I'd like you to watch this playlist from the beginning. When do boys become men? And if you have not checked out my midweek Bible study, there's a video of that one, of this week's study. My friends, until then, may God bless you. May his light shine upon you, and may Jesus bring you joy. I'll see you soon.